some will be dominated, will be overpowered, and all that. So the concept of imbalance, I just give this picture. Some of you might know this little machine. Uh, who amongst you know like how to write this? Just raise up your hand.
Just a notification.
Okay, this is like kind of machine. You don't just write it like that. The key concept of writing this machine is what? When you maintain the balance. That's the key concept. So to give another example with maintaining a balance, remember the first time you start riding a bicycle. That balance is the key for you to ride the bicycle. If you miss your balance, definitely you are going to fall down. So this microbiome, they're supposed to maintain the balance for us to live in peace. Otherwise, there will be a dysbiosis which will result in disease. So what about these three pictures? The first thing is we assume this one is a healthy microbiome, even though it's not balanced, but it's still healthy because there is no external factor. Therefore, it can be imbalanced, but it can still remain healthy in its own way. Also, it can be healthy, but with a risk factor. This we assume like this is a risk factor. It's called healthy because you are not having any physiological imbalance and you are not showing any phenotype as a result of that. But still, there is a risk factor. But by the time it becomes completely imbalanced, then you can start to show some certain phenotype and completely affect your physiology. So in this case, we can say it's completely like disease, and there are so many explanations towards why this like harmful or dominant or whatever bacteria become dominant based on its relative abundance. So when you look at these three systems, that's how you can understand the microbiome imbalance. One might ask, what are those factors affecting the dysbiosis? So usually we have medication, especially antibiotics, because this microbiome, uh, they can refuse to cooperate with the antibiotic, and these days that is what we call antibiotic resistance. This is becoming a pandemic on its own because when you take a medication for a certain disease, those stubborn microbiomes they refuse to respond to the antibiotics, and therefore they cause also imbalance in the system. Also, there is dietary changes, the food we eat. I will not talk deeply about this. That's why I put it in red color, because the next presenter is going to present more about this aspect. Then the new thing I think most of the audience might not be conversant with is psychological and uh, physical stress. So one might ask, the psychological or physical stress it has nothing to do with our gut, with our stomach. Something that has to do with our brain. Yes, it's something that has to do with our brain, but let me not tell you that the brain and the gut are friends. Yeah, they are six of one and a half of dozen. They are the same. They behave in the same way, and also they usually fight. So we are going to explain that as well. Uh, so these are some of the signs and symptoms that you might think, okay, our microbiome have been affected. One of them is GI tract. GI means gastrointestinal tract. Usually we have diarrhea and all that. And it has been reported that some of the brain diseases, one of their essential symptoms is GI tract. For example, the children suffering from autism spectrum disorder, one of their main symptoms is they will be having GI tract. Also, like gut bloating and all that. So these are the things that dysbiosis can result in. So another thing is the food we eat. Each and individual person has some kind of food that when he or she eats, he will feel like he needs to go to toilet. He or she needs to go to toilet. I know some people, when they take orange, they need to go to toilet. When they take coffee, when they take milk and all that. So a layman will not like understand why when Mr. A takes orange, he has to go to toilet, and why Mr. B, when he takes coffee, he has to go to toilet and all that. So these are the elements that when we take, it's like we are introducing something like an alien to the system, to the gut system. So depending on the composition of your gut, as I said in my introduction, this gut, they define who you are. And if you want to prove who you are, try to take all kind of food and see how they will respond. Mr. A, who takes orange, he can be happy, excited, and continue chilling. While Mr. B, immediately he or she takes orange, he or she has to go to toilet. So that microbiome of Mr. B tells us who he is. I hope you understand what I'm trying to explain. While Mr. A lived peacefully by taking the orange. So this alien or foreign agent that creates dysbiosis in Mr. B gut is telling us more about him, because the content of the food he or she ate, it has something important to do with the microbes. For example, you take a food that is that has a high composition of acid, like let's say it's more acidic. It's telling you that Mr. A doesn't have like tolerance to acidic food. Or you take a food that is rich in carbohydrate, and then your stomach started crying and making noise, then you have to go to toilet. It's telling us that Mr. B stomach is not responding to high carbohydrate and all that. So by knowing that, then you are getting an information of preventing yourself, because going to toilet is something abnormal. It already shifts your balance from normal to abnormal. So this is about food. But for one thing, you have to know that your brain and digestive tract are inextricably linked. Here I'm talking about stress. When you look at this picture, it seems like he is having a tough time from his brain. He's sweating and all that. And now he's in toilet. Yeah, the brain also communicates with the stomach, with our own stomach, in a concept which we call gut-brain axis. The brain, through vagus nerve, communicate with our intestine. And of course, when we talk about the intestine, we're talking about the microbiome. In opposite direction, also, the intestine, through the same vagus nerve, talk to the brain, which usually when the gut talk to the brain, it's telling the brain about immune pathway or neural inflammation and all that. And these two ways in which the brain talk to the gut or the gut talk to the brain can be in a positive way or in a negative way. For example, in some cases, it causes like the cognitive and mood dysfunction. Once there is this dysfunction, then even your stomach will start rumbling in some people. I can give you an example with myself. Uh, Years back, whenever I'm writing exam, that was when I was in secondary school. When I get stressed, I had to like finish that exam quickly so that I can go and ease myself. I didn't know why. I didn't know this concept until now. And I believe among the audience, there may be one or two people who also have this kind of experience. So that stress in your mind also communicate with their gut, and it will immediately destabilize the balance in your gut microbiome. And definitely you need to go and ease yourself, meaning you need to maintain the balance. So the question is how it causes this kind of disease, how like these microbes cause this kind of disease. First, we need to understand the concept of the human microbiome. For example, this is just a normal microbiome, and when we want to do experiment, we have to read the metagenome and then check some biosynthetic gene cluster. So these genes that are found in each bacteria, they have different roles, and some of them are responsible for some physiological activities. For example, some genes, they are responsible for metabolite production. As we know, let me not expand it more. These bacteria, they produce what we call metabolites as their own byproducts. They secrete it in our gut. And these metabolites, they have different functions. Some of the functions can be harmful, some can be beneficial. For example, mostly these bacteria, they produce what we call short-chain fatty acids. They produce, among those short-chain fatty acids, we have butyrate, we have glutamate, and all that. So when you produce something into the environment, it's either it will help the environment to be more comfortable or it will stabilize the environment. As I said, acid in the name. Some bacteria, they don't like acidic environment. So what do you think will happen if these bacteria that produce short chain fatty acid become dominant? You remember we talked about abundance. What do you think will happen if those bacteria become more abundant in that environment? It means more short chain fatty acids will be produced. And once it's produced, those bacteria that don't like acidic environment, they have to pack their bags and leave. So what are you creating now? Imbalance, dysbiosis, because they were living in peace, and then these bacteria came and produced these metabolites, which happen to be more acidic, and then those who don't like acid, they have to leave. A simple example, 10 of you are living in a room, and someone just came in, the 11th one. For him coming does not mean you will not feel comfortable. You can only feel uncomfortable if that alien who come has something that will make you feel uncomfortable. For example, by the time he enters the room, he just light on a cigarette. He started one, two, he finished one pack. The whole environment will be polluted. And some of you have no option than to leave. So this is exactly what's happening in this environment. So in another way, these harmful metabolites produced they don't just stay in the gut. They travel through the vagus nerve, as I mentioned, to the brain. And in most cases, they cause what we call neural inflammation. So once there is neural inflammation, then that individual will start to display the phenotype, the symptoms of being abnormal. And some of these symptoms, they have to do with cognitive and mood dysfunction. Some of them, even some brain disorders like Alzheimer's, like autism, and all that. So this is exactly what happens when the microbiome become imbalanced and the metabolites produced were in excess and they have to travel to the brain and cause some imbalance. So in the reverse case, here we talk about what happened from gut to brain axis. But in the reverse case, from brain to gut axis, how does the brain also influence the dysbiosis? Previously, we explained how the microbiome influence brain disorders and all that. So now we need to know, how does the brain on its own influence dysbiosis? That is something that we all know, which is genes, especially those that are highly expressed in brain. They are one of the markers of some of the brain disorders. There are many examples you can see that so gene is highly expressed in Parkinson's disease. So gene was found highly expressed in autism. So gene was identified as a marker of depression and all that. So these genes, they don't just cause the brain disorders. Rather, at the same time, they were also found to create kind of dysbiosis in the gut microbiome. How? I already explained. The mood, the anxiety, the depression, they completely change your gut composition. So what are those elements behind the mood, the anxiety, and depression? Those are the genes. So this concept by which the brain could cause dysbiosis in the gut, we call it brain-gut axis. But the good side of this scary story is that the symptoms of these brain disorders, which are caused by some genetic factors, which at the end create gut dysbiosis, can be improved by adjusting the gut microbiome. This is quite interesting. The gut microbiome become affected because of depression and anxiety. And now scientists said we can fix the brain problem by adjusting the gut microbiome. So this is like the stage of this kind of research these days. Scientists are using some important bacteria and introduced to the gut of diseased person, and this bacteria, by just introducing them to the host, they change the gut composition. They balance the system, and therefore they also indirectly balance the symptoms related to those brain disorders. So here are some examples of research that explain how all these stories happen. For example, in this kind of research, which was published in Nature, they explain about Parkinson's diseases. They use a strain of Escherichia coli, and they realize this protein found in the strain can modify some of what we call alpha synolyl shape, because folding and misfolding, it has to do with the shape, and it determines how this protein could function. Because basically, if a protein is not properly folded, it cannot be transcribed or translated. So, and this is also another concept that results in various diseases. So this bacteria has a role to play in terms of this protein fold. And they find out that these misfolded proteins transmit the error of the vagus from the gut to the vagus nerve to the brain, where misfolded alpha synuclein is linked to disease symptoms. The misfolded result in these symptoms, while this Escherichia coli has the ability to correct this protein structure from being misfolded to the folded one, so that it will not create these disease symptoms. This is just one example of how you can use the bacteria from gut to adjust the brain status from disease to the healthy one. Also, in one of the papers we published, we also work on this kind of elements. We realized that some bacteria in our gut, especially the gram-negative bacteria, they have the potential of producing what we call endotoxin. And this endotoxin is usually produced by those gram-negative bacteria, which have what we call LPS, and it travels through the vagus nerve to the brain and causes what we call neuronal inflammation in autism spectrum disorder patients. Also, in another research, some people find out that this gut microbiome, they have a great impact on neuronal diseases. There are many research which one can read and understand this concept on how this gut microbiome influence brain disorders. So this is also another research, and this is also another finding that explain more and more about the whole concept on the relationship between gut microbiome and brain disorders. So I don't have to expand more and more. I think for someone who wants to know the basic, now you have some solid background to understand the concept. So when it comes to future perspectives, the main of research, as we all know, is not just to publish a paper or to find out more and more about a problem. This is good, but the main aim of every research is how to solve that problem. So after understanding this concept of a relationship between gut and brain, then some group of scientists had to treat all these neuronal diseases solely based on the microbiome. They use the microbiome, they introduce, as I said, to the host, and then they observe the dysbiosis as well as the symptoms of those unhealthy individuals. So this is a schematic like illustration. I just want to explain to you some concept of part of what we did in my lab, just to give you more insight about the relationship between the gut microbiome and the brain axis. So as I talked to you about these bacteria, the bacteria called gram-negative, we know they produce the endotoxin, but we were able to measure their abundance related with the endotoxin they can produce in individuals suffering from autism spectrum disorder. And we realized that this endotoxin increase in disease patients compared to the healthy patient individuals. And the higher the endotoxin, the more production of lipid A products. which is directly related to neuroinflammation, which is one of the symptoms of SD individual. Also, on the other hand, we talk about the food, which are usually rich in carbohydrate. So there are some microbes that like carbohydrate content food, and therefore they easily degrade those carbohydrates based on their enzymes content. And the more they degrade those carbohydrates, the more they produce what we call the short chain fatty acid, which also through the vagal nerve, they travel from the gut to the brain, and also they cause neuronal inflammation. So there are many examples. Even when you remove the gut microbiome, you can also talk about the oral microbiome. They also have that ability to travel to produce those short chain fatty acids that travel from oral to the gut and then from gut to the brain. Also, when we consider the genetic factors, we were able to work on those genetic factors using some knockout mice. And we realized they affect an important pathway which is directly related to brain disorder. So this is just a summary of how this mechanism work in our system, from gut to the brain, from brain to the gut, from healthy to disease. I hope you can be able to grab something important, and I would like to stop here and respond to your questions. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, sir, for the wonderful presentation. Um, I think your presentation says a lot regarding the topic itself. So, as a researcher, I grew more fascinated with the role these microbiome, the role they play in how they affect the physiology, the psychology, the reproduction, the nutrition of insects, because my specialty is in entomology. So as I go deeper into how this microbiome in the area of insects, we call them endosymbionts. So we can also call them microbiome. So I grew more fascinated. How can this little microorganism have so much control on a particular set of organisms? Because insects happens to be the most successful colonizers on Earth. They've colonized the Earth, they've colonized water, they've colonized air. So insects are very, very versatile. So they are everywhere. So how can the microbiome, how are they able to influence them so much? They help them to resist disease. They are even part of the things that help them to spread disease. So because some of us might not know, mosquitoes that causes malaria, they also die of malaria. Anopheles mosquito, they also die of malaria because the plasmodium itself, they are also affecting the mosquito. So the mosquitoes also die from malaria. So, but mosquitoes have only been able to withstand, to protect themselves from the malaria itself, from falling sick of malaria or dying of malaria. So this was what fascinated me. So, but when it comes to the human disease, I got to know that, wow, we can learn a lot of things from how this how this interaction between the microbiome, the bacteria that inhabits our hair, our mouth, our skin, our stomach, they are virtually everywhere. So how they affect our health. So, and we've been given just a tip of the iceberg on how these relationship, on how it works. So I want to sincerely thank you for taking out your time to give a brief and broken down aspects of this particular technical area of research. So it's not easy breaking down things from the technical part to the simple part. So, but you've successfully did that. So, thank you so much, sir, for doing us that favor. We really appreciate. So, I know some of us might have questions, although some might join late and they might not be able to get to the background of what the presenter said. So, and I know, let me open the chat box to see some questions. So, if you can unmute yourself, it would be better if you can also speak and also discuss, direct your question directly to the lecturer. I can see my very good brother, Dr. Tukur Ahmed. So, the floor is yours. You can unmute yourself, sir.
Okay, thank you very kindly for this wonderful presentation, and Dr. ABDULKADIR for telling us about these microbiomes. It's one of the things I would say a lot of us do not pay attention to. So my question is, perhaps you've mentioned it in your talk and I missed it, or is there a way we can kind of modulate this microbiome to improve the health of human?
Thank you, Dr. Tukur.
Please don't address me as doctor yet, please. You have the right to, you are a doctor. Thank you.
That's how humble people are. Yes, actually, there are many ways actually we can regulate this kind of negative activities of microbiome. But one important thing is this microbiome can be unique per individual. Yeah, they can be unique. Therefore, when it comes to like minor symptoms, I think everybody knows like what caused the dysbiosis in a negative way in his system. For example, I know some people when they take milk, they say they have what we call lactose intolerance. I know some people when they take orange, they have this. When they take that, they have. So if you can be able to identify like how your microbiome are, then that's the best way to take care of that. Yes, that's the best way, I think. Also, a healthy diet. I saw in many publications, they usually recommend healthy diet, which include like uh, uh, vegetables and Mediterranean foods. They are very important in maintaining the homeostasis of microbiome in our system. So, like especially the audience that are from Nigeria, usually we are not really concerned about our diet. Our food is really
Anything goes.
super healthy. Yeah. Yeah. So I think we should develop a habit of eating healthy food. Try to add some vegetables in your diet. This is also very important, as recommended by many nutritionists. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for that answer. Uh, I want to quickly add regarding studying yourself. Sometimes people do not know that the way, like just like you said, some people when they take milk, that's a big problem for them. So some people when they eat a particular kind of food, so it becomes problematic to them. So once you've noticed that you have this kind of scenario whereby whenever you take a food and it becomes a problem for you, that means that the content of that food or the full makeup of that food is not advantageous to you. So I can see Mr. Efyong raising up his hand. So, and I think Brother Tukur Ahmed wants to also say something.
Yeah, I actually want to thank him for his very kind response and being for his elaboration. Just a follow-up question. Like
Yes,
it from his presentation, you kind of link it very strongly with genetics, right? And you also mentioned in your response that it has to do with individual, like individual has their specific response or how the microbiome works, making it super complicated. Now, this question is, I have observed that Nigerians, for example, are tolerant to very spicy food, or maybe some part of Nigeria, which at some point I used to think it's genetic. I think as a Nigerian, I should be able to do this. Then this thought of mine changed when after, it's a personal thing. After my children spending some time in Saudi Arabia and they moved to Nigeria just for some time, they were not able to, take this spicy food that we are taking. So they reacted a lot to it. So what can you say in that aspect, linking it to genetics? And, I hope my question is clear.
Yes, yes. I got your question very well. So when we remember the basic of genetics, there are two things that determine the character: the genetics and the environment.
Mm.
Yeah. So in that case, usually the genetic play a bigger role, but then the environment also has its own effect. For example, when it comes to our physiology and normal physiology, we find it difficult to adjust to an environment the first time we find ourselves in that environment. But as time goes on, the human nature of adaptation start uh, to display itself. Then you can adopt. So I think the same thing with this microbiome. Initially, you will find it difficult because of the original genetic composition that you have. But as time goes on, you can definitely try to adjust. I can give you a good example with myself. The first time I came to Korea, we had a big orientation, and I ate what we call kimchi. That kimchi is really, really important. Scientifically, we call it a probiotic. It maintains the microbiome in our system. Really, it's very healthy. But the first time I ate that kimchi, I became completely sick. I was sick for like 3 days. But
Wow.
as time goes on, this is like 4.5 years, I can't eat Korean food without eating kimchi. Because just like our cells, these microbes, they also have a memory.
Mm.
You know, our cells, let me start by giving an example with cells. They have a memory. How you eat food, how you do this, how you do that. That's why when your time to eat food comes and you refuse to eat, you'll feel hungry. Unless you train your system to be eating food after 8 hours, for example, your cells will not recognize that system because they have a memory. The same thing with microbiome. They are used to what you are eating. That's why, for example, bacteroids, they are always dominant in gut. Bacteroids, they are like genus microbiome. They are always dominant in gut, no matter what. Check all the healthy individuals. The abundance of bacteroides is always dominant. But when you move to oral microbiome, the streptococcus, they are always dominant. Why? Because of the environment. What you take in the oral is different from what is there in the gut. So they already have that system, and they have that memory until as time goes on, and the more you impose something into the system, the dominant one will remain, and the less dominant one, if they cannot survive, they will find a way to leave that environment. That's why in our research, when you check the abundance of these microbes, they shift from healthy to disease. The abundance will change. Some will increase, some will decrease. And at the same time, when you introduce something new, like some compound or something, you will immediately see that abundance also shift from another state to another state. It means they quickly respond to what you take, and then they go back to normal. So unless they are used to the system, their memory remain the same.
Oh, thank you so much for the answer. As you are presenting, um, Ademitu Olutoke also dropped a message regarding what you just said, and which has been thought-provoking likewise. She said, who knows, perhaps breakthroughs from the brain-gut axis research might lead to procuring solutions to a range of neurological diseases that have defied research exploits so far. If this happens, then it is likely a researcher from this area of research comes up with a Nobel Prize laureate in physiology or medicine in the nearest future. I actually look forward to that, and I sincerely hope that this would be an area of research that especially Africans would explore regarding nutrition from the nutritional part of things, because Africa is blessed with a lot of flora and fauna. So, and we have some herbs, we have some foods, we have some spices that are beneficial to fight and to that supports our microbiome that will prevent this such diseases from happening. So I think that would be a beautiful area. I want to give Mr. F. Young the chance to also say something on this topic, and would like to hear from you. Thank you so much. Yes.
Always, I want to say a very big thank you to Dr. Abdul MAIGORO. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Mr. F.
However, I have a question. You know, there are these group of organisms gathered together like a team just to fortify themselves for survival.
Mr. F. Young, it's not. We cannot hear you clearly.
Oh, hello. Are you hearing me
Yeah,
now?
we can hear you better now.
Okay. I said, thank you for that presentation. I'm asking as touching quantum sensing in microorganisms. You know how advantageous it is for organism survival. So I want to ask, what's the effect or the role of this quantum sensing in microbiome dysbiosis? Secondly, too, my younger brother, if we cook and we add onions, he can never eat that onions in the food. Then my president once in undergraduate once said if you take meal, he has running stomach and discover that he lacks Lactase. So I don't know if it is only microorganisms that are responsible for this dysbiosis, or there are other things too, like hormonal imbalance or enzymatic dysfunction. So I want you to throw more light on this thing so that I can get it clear, particularly the aspect of quantum sensing in dysbiosis.
Okay. Dr. Ashraf, I got some of the questions. For example, I understood when
Yes.
you talk about one of his younger brothers who cannot eat.
Yes.
Yeah, but I did not get the first one.
The first question. I actually did not get the first question in total too. So probably
Okay,
while you
okay. The first question is this: the role of quantum sensing in
the role
microbiome
of what?
dysbiosis. Quantum sensing, you know, different bacteria come together to a kind of wage war for survival. How do they affect this dysbiosis? Quantum sensing.
Can you please help us to type it? I actually didn't
Okay,
get it. Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
So
While you
you
are
said
typing,
quorum
Doctor Abdul,
sensing. Quorum sensing.
quorum. Okay. Okay, the microbiologist. Thank you so much for helping us out, ma.
Yes, sir.
So, Doctor, did you get the question now?
Yes, he said quorum sensing.
Yes.
I'm sorry, this is the first time actually I heard about this term.
So they said from a quick Google search, probably when we get the concept, you can understand. The quorum QUORUM sensing or quorum signaling is the ability to detect and respond to cell population density by gene regulation. So I think his question is, what is the role of microbiome in this aspect of signaling? So, and how they affect or influence disease occurrence, or the way this microbiome assist each other.
Okay.
So probably.
So when I read, I realized that it gives the bacteria ability to restrict some certain gene expression.
Yeah.
So based on that, this bacteria, their main activities came when they were able to express their own gene. So if a particular bacterium cannot express its own gene, then it cannot produce its own metabolites. It's like that bacteria will have kind of deprivation of its own activity, meaning it's becoming less active or less dominant. So if that bacteria is important in that community, then definitely that lack of activity will show some certain phenotype, be it positive or negative. But if its activity is not that important, and also its abundance is not that significant, then you may not notice any change. So mostly this microbiome, their abundance is their strength. If a particular bacteria is not that abundant, so you hardly see its effect, even if like it's being suppressed by other bacterium, or if it cannot express its own gene. Except there are some mighty bacteria that have a very strong ability. For example, in one of the work I did, I realized Escherichia coli, E. coli, it's not really much in abundance when you check its abundance in both disease and healthy. But then it has a potential of producing the endotoxin, which a 0.01 milliliter of the endotoxin produced by E. coli can destabilize the whole system. Yeah. So what I'm saying, if that bacteria is not that significant, then the quorum activity by other bacteria will not affect its role. Even you cannot notice. But if it is so significant, then the quorum activity of other bacteria definitely will affect the dysbiosis, and it can be positive or negative. Because some bacteria are harmful, so it's better to find someone who can fight them or who can displace them in the system. I hope I answered your question. Then the second part,
about eating onion.
Yeah, inability or disliking something is different. We all have that kind mindset of I like to eat this, I don't like to eat that. This
Exactly.
is I think an individual choice. But if you really want to know, this lack of eating onion has something to do with the person's microbiome, he needs to eat and see what will happen. Yeah, he needs to eat that, and then we can see what will happen. Otherwise, if he didn't eat, we cannot say anything with respect to the microbiome.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I would like to pause on the questions for Dr. ABDULKADIR for now, and maybe after the second presentation, so we can go on that. I would like to call on our researcher to come in, our second resource person, so you can start sharing your screen. Dr. ABDULKADIR, maybe probably you can help us on share your screen so that Miss Oyindamola can also share our screen. Oh, as we prepare for the second presentation, I want to appreciate the presentation and the responses given by Dr. ABDULKADIR on the question so far. On the last one, I want to give an example of myself too. I do not like to take seafood. In fact, if I take any seafood, apart from fish or maybe some crayfish in particular, I hate crayfish. If I take crayfish, I will vomit. So that doesn't necessarily have to do with my microbiome or something. It's just a personal preference that one has gotten used to, and it has been registered into your system. Like, oh, whenever this person takes this particular thing, he is going to be affected by this in this manner. So thank you so much, sir, for the wonderful presentation. So
please, the host, can I please also before the next presentation appreciate my friend and brother Dr. ABDULKADIR. Can I do that, please?
yes. Go ahead.
Okay, Doctor, thank you so much for this, Doctor, and a lot of things that you have been doing. Actually, I just want to share this thing personally. It was Dr. ABDULKADIR that introduced me into researches on gut microbiome, and I'm now currently working on microbiota, gut-brain axis, and stroke. And I would like to appreciate you, sir, for everything that you have done for me and everything that you have been doing. I most sincerely thank you for that.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Dr.
Dr.
ABDULKADIR
Mubarak.
is a very good person. He's my Oga at the top.
And please, before we start, I would also want to comment on most of the things that people have been asking. Maybe they are taking some certain things and they are thinking like it's related with gut microbiome or not. Actually, most of the things that we need to really understand that most of the things that if you have certain predisposition to taking things, it's not only gut microbiome. Like people that doesn't like milk, it's purely a medical condition. We call it lactose intolerance. These people, they have deficiency of an enzyme we call lactase, and this lactase is responsible for the hydrolysis of lactose in milk into galactose. So if they have deficiency of those, enzyme, they will not be able to digest milk and they will not be able to be taking milk. So some of these problems is not purely microbiome based problems, they are enzymatic, and maybe if someone wants to find out really what's happening with him, he can easily check on his doctor, medical doctor or something.
Oh, thank you so much for that brief addition, and which is very, very actually important. So there has to be, a medical explanation behind that thing that you think, oh, probably it might be as a result of microbiome or dysbiosis. So, which it needs to be confirmed before you take that necessary step. So I would like to pause on other comments for now so that we can move on to the next presentation. Our next presenter is they will say a round peg in the round hole. She has gone from she is a certified graduate of food science from the Beta by Far University. So she did her master's in an area of cancer and obesity and cancer studies. So given her background, she has explored through various research areas of which nutrition, what we eat, affects how our disease occurrence is either it is being prevented or it is being supported. So that is why she would give us a kind of broad overview briefly, although we would love it to be we would have loved it to be in there because of the time constraints. It will just be to show us an idea, just like our previous presenter did in the area of microbiome. So she has published a lot of research work, and just like I said from the beginning of this webinar, that we are bringing the term we are bringing the gown to the town and then the town to the gown. So the application of what is being discussed, what is being found out in the laboratory, so we are sharing it in the layman language to the whole world to see. So she has done a lot of work on cancer studies and obesity, and at the same time we are exploring the connection between nutrition and cancer prevention. And just like Dr. Abdulkadir has said, that what we eat has a direct connection to our brain. So, and this time around, we are also exploring the fact that what we eat has a direct connection to how we prevent or cause cancer. So, we pray Almighty God would not let any one of us have any type of cancer. So, but there is a way, it's just like it is being said, prevention is better than cure. And I would like to give the podium to Mrs. Ojulari Oyindamola Vivian to take us through this area of the crosstalk between nutrition and cancer. She is a researcher at Nutrition and Biochemistry Nutritional Biochemistry and Food Biomaterials Laboratory at Kyungpook National University, Daegu, South Korea. So thank you so much, and you have the floor, ma.
Good evening, everyone. Please, I would like to
Good
know
evening,
if
ma.
my screen is showing clearly and if I can be heard clearly.
Yes, yes, we can hear you loud and clear, and we can see your screen, ma.
Okay, thank you. Greetings, everyone, once again. My name is Mrs. Oyindamola Ojulari. I'm a PhD researcher at Kyungpook National University in the Nutrition, Biochemistry, and Food Biomaterial Lab. Uh, Before I begin, I would like to appreciate the previous presenter for the wonderful presentation and insight he had given about microbiome. Thank you, sir, for that wonderful presentation. So my presentation today will be a crosstalk between nutrition and cancer. I'm sure we are all not new to the word nutrition and also probably not new to the word cancer. So the aim is to simplify, what our nutrition can do to either prevent or to cause cancer. Because the truth is, like our moderator said earlier, before we usually believe that cancer is a disease, for the rich, and the poor don't get that kind of disease. It's too expensive to afflict the poor. But thank God for research, thank God for knowledge. We have a better understanding of how these things work, and that's why we are here to share the little we can beyond the laboratory, in simple terms, in terms where we can all relate to. So I'll begin. Like we all know, nutrition, when we talk about nutrition, it has to do with food, what we eat, how we eat it, and what it does into our body. There's a science to nutrition. And please, you pardon me if I have some hiccups once in a while because I have flu. I'm a bit under the weather, so please pardon me for that. So, like I was saying, the science of nutrition is not just about food as we know it to be. Like, oh, we are eating rice. We just know that we are eating rice for rice, to fill our tummies. But where science of nutrition comes in is, okay, what is this rice doing to our body? What do we gain from eating this rice, as well as other food that we consume? And like I said earlier, is a very crucial part of our health, the development of our body, either short term or long term. So for us to have improved health, improved immune systems, and all of those things, the first target, the first point of contact is from what we consume. What we consume can make or mar our immune system, and how active or how our immune system responds to, viruses and all of those things. So for our body to function properly, it requires essential nutrients. And like we all know, the basic nutrients that are essential, we have the carbohydrates, the protein, the fat, vitamins, minerals, and water. So knowing what we know now about food and about nutrition, it is important that on a daily basis we consume some of these nutrients to help them build our health, maintain our body, and so on and so forth. Briefly, maybe I just explain what these basic nutrients, what they do to our body. Starting with carbohydrate. Carbohydrate supplies us with energy in form of calories. Fat is another source of energy, but it helps us to digest more fat-soluble vitamins. And as for minerals, they are inorganic elements that are crucial to our body for normal, functioning. As for proteins, they are essential to our growth, the repair of our muscles, our body tissues. For vitamins, they're important in many chemical processes in the body. So, and which makes it a very, very essential nutrient for us. Also, we have water and fat soluble vitamins. And as for water, we all know water is very, very crucial to a normal body function. Water is the vehicle that carries all these nutrients that we have mentioned to the body. And also, about 60% of our body contains water. So all of these food classes, they have unique functions in our body, and they are essential because each of these classes, they work together to contribute to the well-being of every individual. So before we understand the impact of nutrition on cancer, first, let us let us familiarize ourselves with this word cancer. What do we know about cancer? Of course, we know that cancer is a chronic disease, and one of the things that or should I say how cancer comes about is the interaction of genetics, epigenetics, the environment, the food we consume, like I said, and like the other speaker previously said about using. I would like to borrow that word dysbiosis. So our body is like a molecule. So once one of it, is tampered with or not, functioning the way it should function, so it can result in several type of metabolic diseases or malfunction in general. So normally what happens when a body is plagued with cancer is there's a cancerous cells that begins to grow, and then the healthy cells begin to kind of find a balance, struggle between which is growing more. So when the healthy cells when the cancerous cells overcome these healthy cells in our body, then that's where the progression of cancer begins. So for healthy cells, they bring about a balance between the growth. When our cells are healthy, it normalizes the growth and a programmed cell death that our body should normally undergo. However, when cancer cells are more abundant, they begin to grow, they begin to divide, spread at uncontrolled pace, and then that's where there's a diagnosis when they say, oh, you have a cancer spreading from one part of your body, or it has affected this part, and it can spread to another part. So statistically speaking, globally, it's been recorded that about a lot more of, okay, let me say, a lot more people might develop cancer by the year 2030, and currently more than 1/3 of people in the world might develop cancer in their lives. Now, knowing what we know, like I said earlier, how do we, identify the cause, the trigger of this irregular cell growth in our body? The first thing I would like us to look into is, our dietary pattern, our lifestyle choices. For example, most of us, we are, or well, I wouldn't say most, but some people have an inactive lifestyle. And the truth is, even sometimes people would think that they have, an active lifestyle. This lifestyle could also, trigger these cells, because stress is one indicating factor that can trigger these cells in our body. So stress is one of the things that can trigger the the occurrence of these things in our body. Sorry for the obstruction. So, like I was saying, dietary choices, lifestyle pattern. For example, when some people are stressed, they stress eat. Regardless of whatever they are consuming, they feel like, oh, this is my comfort. This is what can give me comfort. Some people, when they are emotionally down, they eat, out of, how they feel at the moment, believing that that's what can, make them feel better. People choose, I wouldn't say, people choose different make different dietary lifestyle choices for, different reasons. And for some people, it's just out of a personal preference. For example, I can choose to say, oh, personally for me, if I don't take ice cream at least 2 packs in a day, no, my day has not begun. Or, if I don't eat rice, if I don't eat beans, not this is not to say that any of these food I'm mentioning as examples are a bad choice. It's just, an example of, because, oh, I prefer to eat meat to chicken, or I prefer to eat pork to beef. Accumulation of these choices that we make. Another thing that, can trigger or cause this thing is our habit. For example, people have the habit of, smoking, regardless of some people can smoke a pack of cigarettes a day, they can finish 2 packs, and not knowing what, these things are doing to their body. Some people have the habit of, after I finish eating, oh, thank God for this food, I'm so full. They head straight to the bed, not waiting for this food to properly digest. And for some people, it's based on, tradition, our culture. For example, excuse me, please. For example, in Europe, you know, what is a proper burger or a proper wrap without cheese, without sauerkraut? What is a proper celebration without wine, without yogurt? In Korea here that we are, what is Korean food without kimchi? You know, Another thing is, oh, I'm meeting with my friends. It's time for us to, plunge, eat the hamburger, consume pizza, consume coffee. In fact, that is very, very rampant here in Korea that we are in. So for some people, it's just, they just eat what is available. If rice is available 3 times a day, 7 times a week, 4 weeks a month, 12 months a year, they are ready to just eat it. And for some people, it's convenience. Some people, it's the economy. And, so many factors contribute to what kind of dietary choices and lifestyle that we make. That we make. Excuse me, please. So, however, this cancer that we are talking about is not just, caused by majorly what we eat directly. like I was saying when I made the example of consuming rice, I was saying it is not to say that eating rice is bad, or eating or taking ice cream or eating whatever is bad. That's not the point here. The point about this choice of food that we make is how we eat them. How do we consume this food, or what happens after we consume this food? Because there's a term, I don't know if probably we are familiar with it or not, but there's something we call calorie. Basically, what our body needs is keep putting a check to a calorie intake. Like, okay, for example, and for calorie intake, uh my calorie demand will be definitely different from my son's or my husband's or my friends or my mother's. Each individual has uh their calorie demand. So when we talk in terms of food, one of the ways where we can help our body not to accumulate some of the triggers, or some of the uh to kind of find a balance between the things that we consume, is first, I would say that we have to kind of identify how many calories do I need. And know, how do you know how many calories you need? What are those factors to consider when you want to talk about the calories you need? The first thing is your age, your gender, how active are you? These are things that what's your daily lifestyle like? Am I the type that I'm at home like 24/7? I just basically wake up in the morning, take a bath, eat my food, cross my leg, watch the TV now? Or am I the type that I have work to go to, I'm as early as possible, I'm up, I'm out in the streets, I'm at my work, even at my work, not like I'm seated, I'm up and down, I'm active. So of course the calorie requirement of an active person and someone who is inactive will vary, will be totally different. So we have to consider what your lifestyle is like, to be able to know how many calories you think that you need, how many calories you need a day. Now, for example, if let's say someone needs about 2,000 calories a day, right? Or okay, say for my age, for my gender, I need about 2,000 calories a day, right? uh how can I meet this calorie demand? The truth is that for most of us, when we serve our foods, when we eat this food, we feel like, I'm just serving a small portion of food. But do we know how many calories that small portion you think you are eating, how many it's worth? Okay, let's assume you eat a small portion in the afternoon, in the morning rather, but in between your morning and your um afternoon meal, you have snacked. Oh, maybe in your form of snacking, you have taken a cup of ice cream, you have taken biscuits, you have taken all these things. They count, they contribute to, and how many calories we are consuming. And at the end of the day, you are not burning anything off. Then what happens is that you would have, your body would have accumulated more calories than it is burning. And this is how, fat, the food that converts, that breaks down, the ones that converts to fat, the ones that, this is how all of these things, they begin to store in our body. Um, I would digress a bit from cancer into obesity. This is kind of, this kind of dietary lifestyle also, help people become obese. When you begin to, consume more than you expend, consume more energy, more calories than you expend, then they begin to store. In the long run, you just see, your waist is increasing, your weight is, increasing, and things like that. And knowing that, another thing is obesity can also trigger cancer, some type of cancers. So they are interwoven. All these things that we are talking about is not to say, oh, because I'm not obese, I cannot have cancer, or because I'm eating, I'm dieting, I cannot have cancer. No, all these things, they work hand in hand. So my point is, for the nutritional aspect, before we go to the, the chemical part of it, what I'm trying to say in essence is that one of the ways we can help ourselves, and our body to not accumulate all of these things that we have mentioned is to, keep our portion sizes to a reasonable and recommended amount after knowing how, your calorie requirement. Like I said, it's different for each individual. Another way that we can help our bodies is, eating more of fruits, vegetable, and things like that, which I will talk about much more later in the presentation. So for now, I would like us to know again that food is not actually, food not, what when I mean food is not just the direct consumption of the food. How are these food being made? Do we know? Which brings us back to the chemical initiation of dietary carcinogens. For example, uh, I bought bread last week, but I couldn't finish this bread, so I kept it not in a safe, condition. The bread begins to grow mold, and I feel like, oh, I'm just going to cut out this part, and consume. The economy is bad, which takes us back, like one of the things that can, cause all these things is economy is part of it. I don't have, I can't waste this food. I just have to eat it like that. Not knowing that that food, that bread you just want to eat like that, thinking, oh, you've cut out the moldy part, contains aflatoxins. Now, the accumulation of these aflatoxins in the body has a repercussion on your body. That's point number one. Another thing is, I know, especially for us Yoruba people, we like to cook our meat very, very well. I'm so sorry if apologies to non-Nigerians or non-Yoruba here. After we get our meat, we cook, you boil it. After you boil, you fry. After you fry, you still put it in your soup or whatever it is that you're making. It still begins to, cook. The truth is, we are all guilty of all of these things. But scientifically, when we cook meat at very, very high temperatures, they produce something we call heterocyclic amines. And in the long run, the production of these amines in our body has an effect. Okay, another example for meat is, I'll pick cured meat. Maybe, we have an occasion and they killed so many cow or ram or whatnot, and the meat is so in abundance, is so like they couldn't finish it, and of course there has to be a means of preservation. Okay, and then they had salt. How, I don't know, I'm not really familiar with the process, but I know there's a way they cure meat by adding salt, just, and the salt begins to what do I call it? It begins to, should I say, it sucks. It sucks out, or I don't know the right word, but it takes out moisture from the meat, and in turn to preserve it and make it more dry, toughen it, and you know things like that. Not knowing that in the long run there's a compound that is being produced from this process. There's a compound. I'm sure it's not the first time. Probably some of us have heard about uh not eating smoked food or smoked fish. The truth is, back home, before I was really, really into, research and knowing what science, says about this thing, especially in school, my easiest, my go-to thing is, oh, smoked fish. You've added everything together. But in the process of of smoking this fish, in the process of smoking this beef, or whatever it is that we are smoking, there are compounds that we cannot see. I wouldn't want to, bore us with name of all of these compounds and like that. But let's just know that in this smoking process, there are compounds that we don't even know that are being produced. One of it is the polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbon. These hydrocarbons, they are being produced when there's combustion. Of course, it is flame and I don't know what not. Maybe your charcoal, or even if we want to modernize it, we feel, oh, the grill, we can use the grill. At least there's no charcoal, but still, all these things, they happen. And what all this chemical reaction, or what these chemical initiations, what they do is that they begin to start a cancer process by creating cancer cells in our body. And once these cancer cells are produced in our body, that is the initiation stage. You know, these cells are now being initiated in our body. So every little thing we do henceforth onward, after the initiation of that cell, it begins to promote the growth of these cells. And after promotion, of course, they begin to progress, spread, blah blah blah, to from the you can hear of people saying, oh, they have cancer of the lungs, and you are wondering how. Okay, even the lungs is far, sorry, is near, because, oh, you can just imagine when you eat food, of course, it goes through your esophagus, the lung, like, is there's even a direct channel. What about cancer of the blood? How can we, like, okay, not scientifically but physically, how can we, wrap our heads around that, saying that, how can cancer, as in the blood, like, of course, when you try to think about it, I mean, rationally, just layman thinking, you are wondering, I don't understand, how possible is this? And then they begin to, progress, they proliferate, some even become malignant. And, you know that's where, the problem begins. Well, but the good news that we have today, the good news that we have today is that cancer is preventable, which is why uh we are sharing this knowledge with everyone. We can prevent it. And one of the ways, okay, according to World Cancer Research Fund International, it is reported that, about 50% of most common cancers can be prevented. Now, how can we prevent this cancer, the onset, or even, okay, let's say, how can we prevent it from even happening, which we have, partially discussed. And okay, if it has happened, or if we feel it has, begun in the body, how can we control it? The first thing is our body weight. As much as possible, like, I said previously that obesity can lead to cancer. And one of the things that is attributed to obesity is weight gain, you know energy imbalance, calorie imbalance, anything. Talk about talk about uh uh any kind of imbalance, you can think about, you know like our body, like I said, is just, it has a pattern. There's a way it works. Once that pattern is obstructed, then there is a problem. So the first thing we need to put in check, our body weight, our BMI, our body mass index. How can we know all these things? Awareness. Let's be aware. Oh, what is my recommended BMI according to my age, my sex, my how okay briefly, let me just BMI is just basically calculated by your current weight divided by your height times 2. That's how we can get your BMI. That's how we can know what, I mean, under what category we fall in. And keeping our body weight in check is not to say that we should be underweight. That that is another problem as well. So it's just knowing, oh, it's just like I'm running a race. I know that, oh, this is my start line and that's my finish line. So when we are aware of this, it keeps us in check. Like, oh, I know that I cannot go beyond that line. Once I go beyond that line, then there's a problem. So we have to, keep our calorie intakes to a reasonable amount, our food portion sizes to a reasonable amount. I mentioned earlier about fruits, about vegetable, whole grains, lean protein, low fat dairy products, and things like that. Another things that can help us, to keep these things in check is most of us, when we go to buy food, or should I say food materials, we just buy without reading the information, the nutritional information on the packs of this food, which I was also guilty of until, knowledge, of course. We just, I see a snack. And the truth is that this information, they are readily available on every item that we buy. Apart from, buying our local markets, of course. But, if you're buying a package or a semi-processed food or whatnot, as long as that food is processed or packaged, you will find, the how many calories, if you eat a pack of this thing, how many calories, or if it is how many calories to give you per serving, or what's the nutritional composition of this food, like, oh, how many fats does it have. If you feel like you're at the point where you need to reduce your fat intake and you're going to buy a food that contains more fats than fiber, or than carbohydrates, or than vitamins and things like that, and you keep on eating and eating, then of course you are setting yourself up for problems. So one of the things we can do is, let's cultivate the habit of reading what the nutritional information that we have about what we consume. Another thing is, when it comes to protein, of course everyone likes meat, everyone likes to eat chicken, and things like that. How do we eat them? How can we make our sources of protein leaner in sense that when we say something is lean, means that it contains less fat than it usually should. For example, for chicken, I know that, oh, the skin of chicken, it is not to say like eating the skin of chicken is bad. But what I'm saying is, if you are someone who is targeting a leaner choice of protein, one of the things you can do is just cut out the skin from that from your chicken part. You will be left with less of the fatty part. When it comes to fish, when we are making a choice of, oh, I want to eat less fatty fish, but I love fish. Of course, from knowledge, we know that, oh, fish that are scaly, that still have scales on them, are less fatty than fish without scales. So these are all the knowledge that we should gain. We should things that we should be aware of in order to help this choice of healthy lifestyle that we are choosing. Next to the next thing is about our salt intake. I'm sure that is no news. Even as a child, I've heard my parents shout, don't eat too much salt, reduce your salt. But it still looks like a fluke to some people. It still feels like for the food to be tasty, I have to add salt. It's not to say that you don't need salt, but there's sodium requirement for each individual, depending on all the above things that I've mentioned, your age, things like that, What do we drink is another question we need to ask yourself. Some of us, Lagos stress has killed us, and please, one Pepsi fill before you get to the next, because you've been in traffic for 3 hours, you are thirsty again. You have bought Lactase. In the next 1 hour, you're another thing. You know, you begin to drink, or is it beer? You are stressed. You have gone to the bar. You had a couple of bottles of beer, or is it wine? Is it alcohol? Is it rum? Like, excuse me, please. You know, accumulation of all these things. Like I said, we need to rethink how we consume. This thing. The thing that we can do for ourselves is to drink more water. I'm sure we've not just been hearing this thing. The greatest help we can do for ourselves is not easy. Some of us are still struggling. Even there is a different thing when you are not aware. It's a different thing when you are aware and you are struggling to even you know achieve it. For somebody like me that I'm here talking to people about these things, it's even a more greater task, because I know I'm telling people, and it's a disservice to myself, not even to the people who will see me on the road. It's to me to know these things and still be doing otherwise. So I'm telling us today, one of the things that we can do, water is they say water is your best friend, or I don't know how they say it, but it is very, very important. Uh of course there is medicinal information about how to prevent, how to control all these things, but another good news is we can use food as our medicine. We can use food as our medicine. And one of the foods that we can use are phytonutrients rich foods. What are they? The natural phytonutrients, the natural compounds that we can find in plants, in fact in most of the food that we consume. Because once you consume phytonutrient, it works with other essential nutrients that you consume from other sources of food, and helps to promote good health, good functioning of the body, and so on and so forth. My screen here is showing examples of um phytonutrients rich foods that we can consume. As we can see, I don't know if we are saying it clearly, but we have carrots, we have bananas, and the thing is, some of these things are, well, I don't know the state of economy or pocket of anyone, but to an extent they are inexpensive, I would say, because these are things that we can easily find around us. There are always less expensive choices to these things. If we feel, for me to eat strawberry is very hard. Okay, apple nko. What about apple? Of course, we all know apple is cheaper than strawberry, but you still gain the same nutrient from that you will get from eating strawberry, from eating apple. If I feel, what is pumpkin? I don't even know what the pumpkin is. I don't even like the taste, but I like orange. I can get what I will get from pumpkin from orange. So this is to say that some of these things, they are relatively cheap and readily available around us. All we just need to do is, with whatever knowledge that we have, know how we can, eat and balance our plate, balance, control what we eat, and they can help us to promote good health. One of the things that, everything that we have mentioned, the food classes, the vitamins, the phytonutrients, the minerals, everything that we have mentioned so far, what they do to us is, okay, starting with phytonutrients, they produce antioxidants. And antioxidants do to our bodies, they stimulate our immune system, they act as anti-proliferative agents, they promote detoxification of, enzymes, they, they're angiogenesis inhibitors. What is that? That's the, progression of uh, anti-proliferative agents, the progression of cancer cells or in our body. They can help us to, reduce inflammation, to prevent DNA damage. Even when this DNA is damaged, some food can even help us, to repair it. And not and in some cases, some of these things that we consume, okay, let's even assume that, oh, there's a damaged cells. I talked about proliferation, like, or progression. When the cancer cells are initiated in our body, we some things trigger them and they begin to progress. But the good news is, when we consume some of these things, I mean in reasonable amount, these damaged cells or these initiated cancer cells, this food, the nutrients from this food can help us to, kill these cells before they begin to proliferate, before they begin to replicate and, reproduce themselves. And if the cells are at a rate where, oh, they cannot, be stopped, or they cannot be killed at that time, they can only grow. Then sometimes what the food will do is, they will help you to slow the rate at which, these cells grow. Also, for our hormones, they can, in fact, food does a lot in regulation of our hormones, especially with women. Of course, it's no news that women have more, hormones and function and things than men. So what we eat can help us regulate these hormones. And what they do, they can also trigger things like we said, PMS, breakouts, all other things. So many things for women. So now that we are aware of all of these things, or with the help of the awareness of this, nutritional nutritional information that we have now, report shows that cancer cells dropped from for about 27% from 2001 up till 2020. Why did this happen? Because of the awareness on nutrition and how it relates to cancer. So, to conclude my discussion today, I would like to, recommend some of, some things to us. For example, this is a data from Harvard School of Public Health. If we maybe critically look through it later, one of these says that, uh, uh, like I explained, keeping our weight within check to avoid unnecessary weight gain, physical activities, drinking mostly water, you know, and things like that. For mothers, one of the things that is encouraged is, breastfeeding a lot, though that's not nutrition, but then in a way they are all linked. So if we have time, we can, look at this chart and, you know, excuse me, please, and help ourselves to familiarize more about these things. So this is just a slide showing, research to show that it's not just talks. Science have actually been done, like research have been done, and science have backed up, these claims. There are also papers, of course, with my name on obesity, not just cancer, that we can look through, even review papers that have reviewed, so many um food, compounds from food and things like that, that we can consume to help keep these things in check. Thank you so much for your time. I hope that with my little, talk and knowledge sharing, we have been able to, gain one or two things from everything I have said so far. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. Uh, we want to appreciate you despite the fact that you are under the weather. You even try to show up and give us this wonderful presentation. It would interest me to inform everyone that uh, this is not an easy task, especially
Hello.
for those who are into research. It is not an
Hello.
easy task. Yes, we can we can hear you.
Oh, I thought I was lost in the presentation. Okay.
So it's not an easy task breaking down research into simple terms that can be grasped by everyone. So we want to appreciate you for doing justice to the topic. I am actually blown away by some of the data that has been presented regarding how being the food awareness, how it can reduce cancer risk and cancer existence or cancer disease in individuals. So within 20 years, so cancer dropping to about 27%. It's not a small matter. So which shows us that you don't necessarily have to have cancer before we start running all around. So, but we have to start doing the work right from now. As we've heard it, we have the way out against all this. There is this concept about balanced diet and complete diet. Most of the time, a lot of Africans, what we do take is complete diet, but most of the time is not always about balanced diet. So when we eat well, we have the tool to help our body fight against all these diseases. So we want to thank our presenter for the wonderful thing that has been made. For those who missed during the presentation, she made mention of the fact that the BMI, body mass index, is very, very important in our war against cancer. And I am very sure most people do not take cognizance of that. I know there are a lot of questions coming up. And another aspect, for those who missed it, how to calculate your BMI is you take your weight, divide it by your height, multiply by 2. That's your body mass index. From your body mass index, the results that you get, you can check your normal calorie intake that you get that is appropriate for you and that is within the activity that you perform daily. And I also want to allude to the fact that you should also check how your nutrition, how it affects your age, your sex, and your activities. So that is very, very important. So I know there are a lot of questions that is going to be coming up. So, but I would like to give, if you can unmute yourself and also speak directly to the resource person, that'll be fine. But if you can't, I would read out the questions from the comment box. And I think I have seen some uh, from. Thank you. Yeah, I want to mention the fact that for all this cancer fighting food, these types of food are readily available and they are actually cheaper compared to how we are going to. It's not about spending money, big money, but it's just about determination and knowing and having a timetable to what you eat and knowing what to eat for that particular purpose. So I want to thank you for that. I have some questions here. Yeah. Presenter also made mention of the fact that cancer from bad diet comes after cancer that is caused from bad diet comes after smoking being a causal effect of cancer. So you can see how serious it is. After you have smoking, you have the another cancer that is caused by not eating properly. So it is very, very important that we take care of what we eat. Now, there's a question from Ms. Tawakal Ismail. She said that I want to ask questions relating to secondary smoking. Is it also a risk factor for cancer? And another question is if using charcoal to cook can also be termed as a risk factor for cancer too. So I would like you to answer that, Ma.
Okay, thank you. For the first question, which is asking if secondary smoking
Yeah.
is a risk factor, if I'm right.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. As a matter of fact, it is a yes. Secondary smoking is a risk factor. In fact, there's a data that says when you when you're in contact with secondary smoking, it increases your chance of having lung cancer by 20 to 30%.
Wow.
So it's a big yes. It's a risk factor for the onset of lung cancer. And the second question was about
Cooking with charcoal.
If using charcoal, I'm not sure if using charcoal is a risk factor.
Yeah, the
As
smoke
for
from the charcoal.
charcoal, yes, I would say it's also a risk factor because they produce heterocyclic amines that when we especially open smoking of this food, of course, there's it's very rare for you to use charcoal to smoke any food, and the smoke from that the smoke generated will not come into that food. In fact, I would say maybe highly impossible. So automatically when you eat this food that is being smoked, it could also lead to is also a risk factor because of this toxic compound that they produce known as heterocyclic amines. Thank you.
How about this smoky jollof rice that we like? Or people like us that like to eat the bottom part of the down part of the pot.
You are setting yourself up real good, sir.
Okay.
Doctor, so can I ask my question?
Yes, sir. Yes, doctor. Yes, sir.
Dr. OJULARI for this wonderful presentation. And I also want to appreciate the organizer for the first part, but I left for prayer. Okay, with regard to this cancer prevention, Ma, you talk about the aspect of cooked meat and especially most of the African part people, the way we prepare our meat. So I want to ask, it's also most of the hospital do advise, especially the medical, they do advise that you cook your meat very well because of infection. The egg of some parasites, if not well cooked, their egg have resistance to some. So how do we now, juxtapose the two? That's the advice being given by the hospital, irrespective of the type of meat. And then cooking may also subject individual to heterocyclic amine. under that aspect is with regard to smoked fish. What do you advise with the different method by which, especially in Nigeria, we smoke the fish with just who use the charcoal you are talking about. Why some also use to preserve the fish? Please, how do we go about this? What other question I
Okay,
have?
sir. Thank you for your question. Uh, Firstly, my message was not to say that um we shouldn't cook our meat well. I was saying that cooking at a very high temperature, of course, well done meat is a factor for. I'm sorry, not undone meat. Not properly cooking your beef, your eggs, your proteins in general is a very huge risk factor for food poisoning, and that's even the the list of it, and other amongst other things. So what I'm saying is, when we cook our meat, it shouldn't be at a very high temperature. There's something when we come in food science, there's low temperature, long term cooking, high temperature, short term cooking. I wouldn't like to boast with the details, but there's a way you cook your meat. For example, slow cooking it. It will be done. It will, it will be well cooked eventually, but not, you know, using a very high temperature and then cooking it for a long time. That's the difference between. Of course, we shouldn't consume undone meat or undone proteins, eggs, and things like that. It is very dangerous. But how the point is how to cook it. Cooking it, if you are using low temperature, you could cook for up to a certain time. If you are using high temperature, you could cook for a certain short time. I think for meat and eggs, between maybe 155 to or one, I don't know, maybe 150 thereabout to 165-degree Fahrenheit are the best temperature for cooking these proteins. So I hope that.
answers that. So how about smoked fish? What advice would you give on how to better smoke them? You have been muted, ma. Uh, I think you just pressed now it's now on mute.
Sorry, I couldn't
Um,
hear if you said anything to me before.
Regarding smoked fish, so he asked that what are the better ways in which the smoked fish can be
Oh, the
um
better
smoked?
alternatives.
Yes, yes, yes.
I would say oven under controlled, appropriate temperature and time.
But what if we don't have oven?
Ah,
I think
ah,
I once heard that for example those suya guys that
mm,
once we take suya or any smoked fish smoked meat, so the reason why they used to add onion, tomato, cabbage to this is that when we take all these, as we are taking the onion and every other thing and the soya, so the antioxidants in this particular food material, just like you mentioned, phytochemicals, they will negate the effect of any carcinogen in the meat we are taking. So that is one thing that I heard. But the best alternative so far, I think, is just to use
Well, I don't
hair.
know. I don't know what theory proves that, but I don't think that works because how many phytochemical is present in now? Just one or two slices of onion that they will put in the
Onion.
suya, or one slice of tomato that will be there that would combat the toxin that you have consumed in maybe 1,000 naira suya. That's not. It's not. I don't think that's realistic.
Well, hopefully we get to a point where we can achieve that in Africa, but that's the reality we are living in. There is another question that I think is very important. I know a lot of people have raised up their hands, but I would like to take this from Oladoje Abiba, scholar Oladoje Abiba. So she mentioned the fact that 1 out of 5 women are prone to cancer, and that not all lumps are cancerous. So she said that how can we manage lumps from becoming cancerous? So because I think during your presentation you mentioned the fact that after sometimes you can manage cancer from progressing into something that will be called be cause of mortality. So she stated that all the options that you've explained, does it still are there any other alternative that you can also propose, or can we still stick to the measures you've mentioned so far?
Thank you for that question. It's a very good one. Well, I'm not a medical doctor, but concerning lumps, as far as I know, for example, I think I mean, breast cancer, for example, the first thing is awareness in everything. How can you check for lumps in your breast? When you know how you can check, early detection is very, very important. When you check for these things and you feel, oh, I can feel a lump in this thing, then let's go check it out. For tumors, there are benign tumors and there are malignant tumors. A tumor is first benign mostly before it becomes malignant. So, for example, these lumps that we feel, it could be a development of tumor. It could be tumors in that cells. Now, that tumor can either be benign or malignant, like I said. At the stage of it being benign, if you get it checked out before progression into malignant tumors, I mean into cancer causing tumors, the first step is to get it checked as soon as possible. For cancer, the truth is early detection is very, very, very important. It could reduce the risk of it being life threatening, or spreading and things like that. So the advice is, when you notice a lump in any part of your body, please go get it checked out as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the response. I think that's sufficient. I have some hands that have been raised up. I think I saw Abioye Madinat and Ms. Abioye Madinat and Adeyemi Adegoke. I think Ms. Abioye
Good afternoon.
Madinat first, so you have the floor, ma'am.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Ma, for the eye-opening lecture and all. So my question is that I thought you were going to mention it, but it seems you didn't. About GMO foods, like genetically modified foods. What's their implication or their influence on cancer and all? Because I used to know that when we were small, I don't used to hear anything like cancer. It was not this rampant. So now that in every like 5 cases of any medical issue, you're going to see like maybe 3 or 2 cancer patients. So I just sit down and think like, okay, maybe because of the technology on all has brought us to this stage. So I don't know if there is any correlation between genetically modified foods and cancer. Then another one is about the question somebody asked about charcoal pot, using charcoal to cook. Is it that using charcoal to cook is wrong, or using it to grill? Because normally people use charcoal to cook, like cook normally, not grilling. Sorry for disturbing. Then another thing, about animals and poultry, that people actually use drug. They use drug to stimulate their production and their weight and all. So their effect on like our own health, consuming them, our own if like the effect on our own food, like diet and all. So I want to know how have you been affected by all these issues? So that's my question. I hope I'm clear.
Yes. Beautiful.
Yes, Ma, your questions were very clear. Firstly, let me start with sorry, I'm trying to jot down the questions.
GMO, cooking with charcoal, and drug stimulated
Okay,
production of the dairy product.
I will start with answering your question about charcoal for cooking or for grilling. It's not to say that we shouldn't use charcoal to cook. The idea of toxic compound from charcoal is when the food you want to eat is directly exposed to this smoke. For example, when we are grilling our fish using the open, the charcoal method, when we wrap it, we put it on top. So when these smokes come, it comes on top and we eat that fish like that. So using charcoal to cook is different from using charcoal to process our food, like to grill it, to especially grilling. I think that's the major part with the charcoal. So that's the difference. And for genetically modified food, that question is kind of tricky because so far I don't think there's substantial evidences that show that genetically modified foods, like should I say, like eating genetically modified food will cause you cancer. However, in the process of modifying the genes of this food, they can be harmful to our health, and they can cause allergies, and they can cause cancer issues. But it's not to say that we cannot eat them or it should not be used. It's just that honestly, that question is kind of tricky because I don't know how to explain it, that it will not be taken as, oh, it's my word. It's just because the truth is genetically modified foods can also be beneficial to our economy. Having food all around season and all of these things is also a way to help humanity and things like that, to provide food for us. But we should be wary of it. I would say is our food is best eaten fresh, directly from source, if not directly, but at least less processed, I should say. And for those that introduce drugs to that's a big no, because for starters, what's the compound? I'm sure most farmers that do introduce drugs into their chickens or poultry, whatever, to increase the weight, I'm sure they are not even knowledgeable as much as knowing what compound is in that drug. They just know, oh, when you inject taken with this thing, it will increase in size. What is the compound in that drug? How? What reactions happen? How does, like, you know? But because of profit and other reasons, they don't care about these things. So it's kind of dangerous, and it could definitely be a risk factor for the onset of cancer. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for those replies. I think we have gone like 25 minutes beyond our time. I would give one more chance for a question. I think I will give Mr. Adeyemi Adegoke the chance. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Ojulari, for the beautiful presentation. I think we really need more of this kind of awareness in Africa, most especially in Nigeria. Yeah, thank you, Ma. I think I would suggest that we should have a kind of platform for our people so that they can get oriented about this kind of presentation, because this cancer disease has become a disease of all, irrespective of ages. Yeah, I have a question and a contribution. The first question is that, please, I don't know if plant enhancing agents like fertilizer we had to our plant to make it come good and the likes, I don't know the stand on it or their contribution toward the cancer development, and as well the soda drinks. I don't know if they really have a kind of connection with cancer. Then my own contribution is that I think there is one plant that is undervalued in our area also, that also serve a kind of recipe to overcome cancer. That is Aphramoma meligueta. They call it Atari in Yoruba. I don't know if you have any article or something that's related to that, because I've heard from people, they said it also helps in management of cancer or something like that. Thank you, man.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you for your question, sir. Firstly, I will start by answering your question about fertilizer and cancer. I think, as far as I know, exposure to fertilizer, if not ingested, directly, is not enough to significantly increase our risk of having cancer. It's not like, oh, you are directly coming in contact or eating fertilizer or something, because uh when we use these things in soil, they are being broken down, some are uptaken by the plants. The chemical composition is already disrupted, so to say. So if not directly, like if there's no typical like exposure to any of these materials, is not enough to significantly induce it's not enough to significantly increase our risk of having cancer. And for the question of soda intake, if you take one soda or two bottles of soda today, does not mean you have cancer. What we are the knowledge we are passing across is accumulation of these things in the body, what it does in the long run. Some things, you can see the effect of some things that we consume short term. However, the onset of this the onset of from the onset of these diseases from the consumption of some of these foods do not occur, do not show until later, I mean until the long run. So taking soda is like an accumulation, and one thing is that it is linked to body weight gain. And like I said earlier, excuse me please, I said that obesity, body weight gain is associated with obesity, and obesity in turn also is associated with cancer. So it's like a link. Everything is like a link. So, and it's an accumulation of all of these things not a one time or 2 or 3 time intake. No, we are talking about long term. I mean, over the years intake, over months intake. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I
And concerning the
On the third
alligator pepper,
question, the alligator pepper, I have actually I know there are a lot of potential phytochemicals from locally made African local plants in Africa, or common ones that have been tested against for their cytotoxic activity. So, and luckily, just like you said, a research was done in 2014 on the cytotoxicity of 4 Aframomum species. So Aframomum species, we have different species towards multifactorial drug resistant cancer cell lines. So actually, there are lots of studies that have been done in Africa, but the translation of those research into using it as a potent cure. Yes, there are some people can go into the research, especially regarding to Aframomum. And one thing I've discovered so far about plants that are being used for against cancer, so to say, in Africa, are plants that are rich in phytochemicals. So especially spicy foods. So and spicy foods and seeds. So I think that's an area that one can explore. Yes, there are works that have been done on alligator pepper. So we are good to go. I think we are good to go on that. So thank you so much, everyone. It would have been my pleasure that we can go on and on, but we want to restrict the webinar to at least 2 hours, and we are like 2 hours and 2 hours 31 minutes beyond the time. So I want to sincerely appreciate everyone for being here, both in spirit and mind, and spending our time to listen to this wonderful orientation. So all thanks to our resource persons, from Dr. ABDULKADIR to Mrs. OYINDAMOLA OJULARI, for their wonderful time and from their wonderful efforts. So regarding the use of fertilizer, pesticides, and related commonly used agrochemicals, so they might accumulate in the body, and just like Dr. Adeni has said regarding that. So we should be careful regarding all those. Anything that would cause harm to our body later on, that will lead to accumulation. So that is why it is good to go organic whenever we are going into plants. So the question was made regarding poultry fowls to poultry that they modified using all these natural local breed fowls, because whether we like it or not, all the chemicals we are taking are responsible and accumulating into our body and are leading to the manifestation of all these disease occurrence. So thank you so much for the knowledge that is being shared in this session. I really, really appreciate you. We really appreciate you, and we want to thank everyone that is being here present. So till another time when we'll be having the another webinar, another session, another training from Nobelkinmat Limited. I want to say thank you for coming, and see you another time. So the webinar session is officially ended. Thank you. We would share, if we need any more questions regarding to ask directly to our resource person, we will share their emails so that we can reach out to them directly. Thank you so much, everyone. It's been a pleasure for the past 2.5 hours. So being with you here. So see you another time. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you, ma.
thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. Bye bye, everyone.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much for the nice presentation.
Bye-bye.
My God, Dr. Ashraf, good to hear from you, sir.
It's my pleasure. it's my pleasure, sir. Thank you so
Please, I'm
much,
sorry
sir.
to draw you back. Sorry to draw you back. There was a time
Yes,
she
sir.
made mention of charcoal. There was a time she made mention of charcoal. Is it
Yes.
that it causes cancer? Because I missed out from that point. That was the question I wanted to ask. Don't know if you can help out.
Yeah, she has clarified that it's just open charcoal, like open flaming. It's when you are doing open flaming with charcoal, so you are increasing, one is increasing the risk for cancer. But cooking with charcoal, maybe you have a pot, you are cooking in a pot with charcoal, so that is different from that of open flaming. Maybe you now, the way we roast corn, we put it
Corn,
just,
okay.
yeah. So that's the word spirit pot.
Lisa, do
Thank you so much,
you have
sir.
idea what? Do you have idea what is in that charcoal that is responsible for that cancer?
I
She made
can't
mention of
remember.
something like that.
There is a
Okay.
kind of chemical in it that is responsible for that. It's a
Sorry,
carcinogenic.
I'm still online, Mr. Effiong.
Effiong, yes.
Thank you so much,
The
man.
name of
Thank you,
the
man.
the name of the compound is heterocyclic amine.
Heterocyclic amine.
Okay,
Heterocyclic.
heterocyclic amine. Oh, thank you so much, man. Thank you. It was an interesting one, but you know, when situations like this occur, we we should also look for alternative for our
Yeah,
people,
yeah.
because when
Mm.
when we identify
The
challenge like this
problem.
and we don't bring alternative, which since I was born up till now, I'm telling you, I'm 30 something years by God's grace. I've never seen any alternative for charcoal. So when things come out like this, what are the way forward alternative? And the alternative should not be something that will give us more burden, but it should be a better option.
I think you can help us work on that one. We'll give you Nobel laureate.
Oh my God. However, it was enlightening.
Actually,
Thank you
the
so
other
much.
alternatives are actually expensive. So not every household
Yes,
has oven. Not every household have a hair fryer. So
yeah,
that's the problem.
because I can remember I school in the north when I did my MSc defense. The external examiner asked me one question, and it was so local. It was like you're using PCR to detect schistosoma hematobium. How do you think our poor villagers will be able to afford this technology? He said, justify this answer, I'll give you A. He said, your project is A work, but if you cannot justify that, I tried to convince this man. Well, this man gave me B. He said, I did not justify. As long as his people cannot access it, then, oh my God.
But it's not your problem now. Oh my God.
So since that time, anything I'm doing like advancement, I try to look for the solution at the
A
low,
local
because
solution.
it is the grassroots that will benefit this thing more. So if I come up with something and my people at the grassroots cannot benefit it, it look as if they're not feeling the impact. Though it's helping me increase visibility, but my people are not feeling it. So since then, I've been trying to look for solutions that can benefit my people and the world. In short, that man changed my mentality, my thinking since then.
That's actually impressive. Impressive. Oh, thank you so much, sir, for the insights.
Thank you, sir.
We'll keep
I'm
on
grateful.
working on
Please,
that idea.
sure, don't forget to share the mail.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Especially
Yes, sir.
microbiome. I have
Okay,
a
sir.
lot of questions.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you so much, everyone. So
And if
see
possible,
you.
to share the slide too, sir. To share the slide. Thank you, sir.
Oh, okay, sir. I would ask him to.
All right, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right, thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Bye, sir.
Yes, sir.